Picture a world lit by bronze and fire. A world of palaces that glitter on hilltops, of kings who write to each other on clay tablets, of ships that cross entire seas packed with copper, tin, gold and grain. A world that believes it will last forever. Now picture that same world 90 years later. The palaces are blackened ruins. The royal roads are broken and empty. The writing has stopped. The trade routes have gone silent. And across hundreds of miles, the only sound at night is the wind over abandoned stones. This is the story of the Bronze Age collapse. A time when civilization itself almost died. A time when the most advanced societies on Earth fell, one after another, as if pushed by an invisible hand. A time when, for the people who lived through it, it truly felt like the end of the world. For more than 3,000 years, this story lay buried in ash and dust. Only fragments survived, burned tablets, broken walls, whispers in later myths of cities destroyed by fire from the sea. Tonight, we are going back to that lost age. We will walk through its shining courts and crowded harbours. We will watch it rise to unimaginable power. And then we will watch it unravel. Because understanding how their world fell apart might be the closest thing we have to a warning for our own. Let us begin, not with collapse, but with glory. The year is around 1300 before the birth of Christ. If you could look at a map of the Eastern Mediterranean, you would see a dense web of power. To the west, the palaces of Mycenaean Greece rise above the sea. To the north, the Hittite Empire dominates Anatolia from its capital at Hattusa. To the south, the new kingdom of Egypt stretches from the Nile deep into the Levant. Along the coasts and islands, smaller kingdoms flourish. Ugarit, Byblos, Alatia on Cyprus. Canaanite city-states with harbours full of foreign ships. This was not a world of isolated kingdoms. It was a network. Kings called each other brothers. They wrote on clay tablets in Akkadian, the international language of diplomacy. They sent daughters to marry foreign princes. They exchanged gifts of gold, ivory and exotic animals. From the mines of Afghanistan came lapis lazuli for royal jewellery. From the mountains of Anatolia came silver. From Cyprus came copper, carried in huge ox-hide ingots. From far-off lands came tin, the rare metal needed to turn soft copper into hard bronze. Bronze was the magic of this age. Bronze swords in the hands of chariot warriors. Bronze-tipped ploughs turning the soil. Bronze tools carving stone, shaping wood, crafting statues and temples and ships. But bronze was not easy. Copper and tin did not lie side by side. To make bronze, you needed long-distance trade. You needed stable routes. You needed trust between distant kingdoms. You needed a world that functioned like a delicate machine. And for a while, that machine worked. In Egypt, pharaohs carved their victories in stone and built colossal temples along the Nile. In Hatti, kings ruled from great fortified citadels, their archives packed with secrets written on thousands of clay tablets. In Mycenaean Greece, warrior kings ruled from hilltop palaces like Mycenae and Pylos, their storerooms full of oil, wine and weapons. In cities like Ugarit, scribes kept detailed records of cargoes, contracts and royal orders. Merchants could send a ship full of copper from Cyprus and know that it would be received, weighed, recorded and paid for hundreds of miles away. Farmers could harvest grain and olives and trust that the palace economy would redistribute food in times of need. Carpenters, potters and metalworkers could specialize, knowing that the system around them would keep feeding them. This was a complex world, and that complexity was its strength, but it was also its weakness. because in a complex system, you do not need a single massive disaster to cause collapse. You only need pressure in the right places. You only need enough shocks arriving close together that the system cannot recover. Between about 1200 and 1150 before Christ, that is exactly what happened. The story of the collapse does not begin with a single battle or a single drought. It begins like a faint tremor, a letter delayed, a shipment that never arrives, a strange rumor from over the horizon. In the archives of these doomed kingdoms, we still have some of those last letters. They read like messages from people standing on the edge of an unseen cliff. From Ugarit, a king writes in panic to his overlord, the king of Hatti. Enemy ships are sighted along the coast. His own troops are away. He begs for help. It never comes. In another letter, a merchant cries out that his warehouses have been plundered and his men killed. He warns that the roads are no longer safe. Somewhere in the north, earth shakes. Archaeologists have found layers of destruction in several cities that look like earthquake damage. Walls thrown down, bodies buried under rubble. Around the same time, climate begins to shift. Pollen records and lake sediments tell a quiet story. Rainfall decreases. Drought creeps across the Near East. Harvests begin to fail. In an age when most people are farmers, bad harvests mean famine. And famine means fear. Fear means instability. The palaces that once looked like unshakable fortresses depended on the steady flow of food from villages and fields. Once that flow faltered, their power was less secure than it seemed. And then, out of this growing instability, something violent appears on the sea. Egyptian records call them the Sea Peoples. Warriors from many lands, coming not just to raid, but to destroy and to settle. They come in long ships with prows shaped like birds or beasts. They come with swords and spears and families. They burn, they take, they move on. No one knows exactly who they were. Maybe displaced groups from the Aegean or Anatolia. Maybe coalitions of refugees and raiders, pushed by hunger, pulled by the promise of new land. What we do know is that they struck again and again across the eastern Mediterranean. In city after city, archaeologists have found the same story written in ash. A destruction layer at the very end of the Bronze Age. Mud brick walls burned until they turned red, stores of grain charred and baked, arrowheads embedded in collapsed roofs. Ugarit, once a thriving port city, vanishes. In its last archives, a letter lies baked hard by the same fire that destroyed the city. In that letter, the king cries out for aid, saying that enemy ships are already raiding his lands. The tablet was never even sent. The attackers came too fast. In Greece, the great Mycenaean palaces are destroyed one by one. Mycenae, Pylos, Tyrins, many burn, some are abandoned soon after. The Linear B script used to keep palace records disappears. Writing itself vanishes from Greece for centuries. In Anatolia, the Hittite Empire collapses. Its capital, Hattusa, is sacked and burned. Its kings vanish from history. The vassal states that once answered to the great king of Hatti are suddenly on their own. Egypt feels the shock as well. In the time of Pharaoh Ramesses III, the Sea Peoples come not as raiders, but as an entire migrating force. Men, women and children, carts, oxen, everything they own. They come by land and by sea. In scenes carved on the walls of Medinet Habu, Ramesses shows his ships clashing with the invaders. Egyptian archers stand on crowded decks, firing arrows into enemy boats. The Sea Peoples are shown drowning as their ships overturn. Ramesses boasts that he has crushed them. He writes that he has made them like non-existence. It is one of the last great victories of the Bronze Age. And yet, even Egypt, will not escape the cost. After these wars, Egypt is never quite the same. The empire contracts, the economy weakens, the central power of the pharaoh erodes. Across the entire region, palaces are abandoned. Central administrations vanish, long-distance trade collapses. The carefully managed system of the Late Bronze Age is broken. But war and invasion alone do not explain everything. They were part of the story, not the whole story. Think of the Bronze Age world as a tightly balanced tower of blocks. The blocks are climate, trade, agriculture, technology, politics and war. You can pull out one or two blocks and the tower sways, but stays up. Pull out more and it crashes. Drought weakened agriculture. Famine stirred unrest. Unrest made armies harder to feed and pay. That made borders weaker. Weaker borders made invasions easier. Invasions destroyed cities and trade. Without trade, bronze production faltered. Without bronze, the very military that protected the system grew weaker. Meanwhile, inside many kingdoms, ordinary people were paying the price for centuries of elite wealth and warfare. There are hints of internal rebellions, evidence of palaces burned from within, not attacked from without. Imagine being a farmer in a small village. Years of bad harvests. Soldiers demanding grain for distant wars. Taxes you can no longer pay. Children who are hungry. At some point, loyalty to a distant king becomes fragile. Some researchers think that in some places people simply turned against the palace system itself. They walked away. They joined raiders. They burned the symbols of elite power. At the same time, a quiet technological shift began. Iron. Iron was harder to work than copper and tin. It required higher temperatures and new skills. But iron was also far more common. Once people learned to make iron swords and tools in large numbers, the monopoly of bronze collapsed. We find more iron artifacts in the layers that come after the collapse than before. The Bronze Age ends in fire and darkness. The Iron Age rises slowly from the ashes. For the people living through it, none of this would have sounded like an academic theory. For them, it was simple. The world they knew was ending. Roads they once walked were unsafe. Markets they once trusted were empty or burned. Gods they once believed would protect them seemed silent. In Greece, centuries pass with almost no writing. Population shrinks. Large buildings are rare. Simple pottery replaces the fine decorated wares of the palaces. This is what later historians would call a dark age. In the Levant, some survivors gather into new kinds of communities. Small, fortified hilltop villages. The ancestors of later peoples, including the Israelites and the Phoenicians, live through this age of fragmentation and fear. In the ruins left by the Hittites, small Neo-Hittite kingdoms emerge. They carve new monuments among the broken stones of the old empire. On Cyprus and along the coasts, refugee groups mix with locals, forming new cultures. Some of these may be the ancestors of the very sea peoples who once burned the cities of others. Everywhere the old order is gone. The old kings are dead. The old capitals are silent. The Bronze Age collapse did not end humanity. But in this part of the world, it ended a world. A particular way of being civilized. A way of doing trade, of organizing power, of believing in the permanence of palaces and kings. For those who came after, the memory of that lost age lived on only in fragments. In Egypt, scribes copied older tales of battles and foreign princes, not truly understanding the network that had once existed. In Greece, poets would later sing of great kings and mighty cities in the Iliad and the Odyssey. Behind the myth, there may be a dim memory of the fallen Mycenaean world. When we look back with the tools of archaeology, climatology and textual analysis, we do not see a single cause. We see a convergence. Climate stress, earthquakes, migrations and invasions, internal rebellions, a brittle system stretched to its limits. We also see a warning. The Bronze Age world was globalized in its own way. Resources traveled long distances. Elites at the top enjoyed wealth supported by complex, fragile systems beneath them. A shock in one part of the network could ripple outward to affect others. Today, our world is more connected than theirs ever was. Our trade routes span continents. Our supply chains depend on stability. Our climate is changing. Our technologies, like theirs, can be both our strength and our vulnerability. The collapse of the Bronze Age is not a prophecy. History does not repeat itself in simple loops, but it does whisper patterns. It shows us how advanced, confident societies can fail to see the cracks forming beneath their feet. The people of that age did not think their system could truly fall. They had known wars before. They had known droughts before. They had always recovered, until the day they did not. The lights went out slowly, then all at once, palace by palace, city by city, tablet by tablet. The last scribes pressed their final words into wet clay as fires approached their doors. And then, for centuries, silence. But collapse is not just an ending. It is also a transformation. Out of the ruins of the Bronze Age came the seeds of the Iron Age civilizations that would shape the world to come. The Phoenicians would rebuild trade by sea, spreading their alphabet and their ships across the Mediterranean. In the small highland communities of the Levant, new religious ideas would form that still echo today. In Greece, after long darkness, city-states would rise that would eventually give us philosophy, drama, and democracy. The price of that future was the death of an older world. When we walk today among the tumbled stones of Mycenae or the ruined walls of Hattusa, it is easy to see only silence. But if you listen closely, you can almost hear the echo of carts rolling along palace roads, the clatter of bronze tools in workshops, the murmur of scribes reading letters from far-off kings, the crash of the final fires. The Bronze Age collapse nearly ended the world as they knew it. It reminds us that no system, however grand, is unbreakable, that the line between stability and chaos is thinner than it appears. But it also reminds us of something else. Civilizations fall, people endure. From farmers who planted new fields in sight of broken walls, from sailors who learned new routes when old harbours lay in ruins, from survivors who taught their children stories of lost cities and fallen kings. The thread of human history continued. We are the inheritors of both their triumphs and their disasters, their golden ages and their collapses. As we look back across 3,000 years, standing among their ruins and reading their last desperate letters, we are really asking a question about ourselves. In the face of crisis, will we repeat their mistakes, or will we finally learn from them? The Bronze Age is gone. Its palaces are dust. Its kings are names on broken stones. But its last lesson is still alive. A complex world can fall. A fragile system can break. And sometimes the end of the world is not an explosion, but a slow, spreading silence. The silence that follows when the last bronze bell in the last great palace stops ringing, and no one is left to hear it.